10 strange mysteries from around the world that are still unsolved. All things that cannot be explained remain an intriguing conversation topic for many people around the globe. Some mysteries, however, are more interesting than the rest simply because of how weird they are. 1. China's Dwarf Village. Yangsi, a remote village in southwest China's Sichuan province, has baffling scientists for decades. Around 40% of its inhabitants are several heads shorter than the average human being. 36 of the village's 80 residents are dwarfs. The tallest one is about 3 feet 10 inches tall and the shortest, 2 feet 1 inch. That's too large a percentage to be categorized as random occurrence, but so far no one has been able to provide a better explanation. Today, because of the large number of height-challenged residents, Yangsi is known as the Village of Dwarfs. According to village elders, their peaceful, happy life was ruined on a summer night many years ago, when a vile disease struck the region. Several locals suffered from a mysterious condition that mainly affected young children between the ages of 5 and 7. These children just stopped growing, remaining at the same height for the rest of their lives. Apart from their inability to grow taller, some of the victims also suffered from various disabilities. Scientists and experts visited Yangsi to study the water, soil, and grain in the region. They also examined the affected individuals in the hopes of gathering a few clues. However, they were unable to determine the cause behind the condition. It remains as mysterious today as it was some 60-odd years ago. According to the writings of the district officials, the strange disease was discovered in 1951. The victims back then were described as having short limbs. A census was conducted in 1985, discovering about 119 such cases in the village. Apparently, the disease did not stop with the original victims, it was passed on to the next generation as well. While Chinese authorities aren't exactly denying the existence of the village, they haven't opened the place to foreigners yet. So all we have to go by are a few photographs of the natives and some very bizarre rumors. Although the condition was officially recorded in 1951, reports of dwarf sightings date as far back as 1911. In 1947, English scientist Dr. Carol Robin Evans claimed to have seen a few hundred dwarfs living in a remote valley, in the area where Yangsi is located. While the dwarfs themselves might not be unusual, it's the sheer number of them that's perplexing. At one point, as many as 120 of them were spotted, which just could not be a matter of chance. The probability of stunted growth is about 1 case in 20,000, which means that there has to be a very specific reason for the phenomenon at Yangsi village. In 1997, a new theory suggested a high concentration of mercury in the soil, but it hasn't been proven yet. Naturally, the villagers began to believe that evil forces were at work. Some blamed the bad feng shui of the area, while others thought it was because their ancestors were not given a better burial. But the most bizarre explanation so far states that a long time ago, a man named Wang spotted a black turtle with strange feet. Some of the villagers wanted to let it go, but they ended up roasting and eating it. When the disease struck, they started to believe that they might have been better off releasing the turtle. Some people blame toxic gases from when the Japanese invaded China many years ago. But the Japanese never reached the village of Yangsi, a fact that the villagers are not willing to accept. Throughout the years, several residents have left the region in fear of being affected by the strange condition, but things seem to be improving. While many of the older locals are up to 80 centimeters in height, the new generation seems to be unaffected by the weird dwarfism phenomenon. 2. Dorothy Eady and Sety. When Dorothy Eady arrived to Egypt for the first time, it was obvious to her that she had been there before. But her last visit near the Nile may have taken place thousands of years earlier. Dorothy was born on January 16, 1904 in the London suburb of Blackheath. Doctors believed that she would not survive a terrible fall when she was 3 years old. However, it seems that the accident she faced was the beginning of her unbelievable life, a moment of opening the gate to the memories of a past life. Over the years, Many skeptics tried to disprove Eady's mystifying tale, but nobody could ever fully negate that she was one of Pharaoh Sety's c. 1290 to 1279 BC lovers. An ancient king's lover? Dorothy grew up in a Christian family, and she attended church regularly when she was young. One day, her parents took her to the British Museum. While looking at the photograph of the Temple of Sety, a pharaoh of the 19th dynasty of the New Kingdom period, and the father of Ramesses II, she said that it was her home. She couldn't understand why there were no gardens and trees around the temple, but she recognized the monuments and other artifacts in the rooms of the Egyptian collection. She kissed the feet of the statues, and very soon after, decided to study ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. One of her teachers was the famous E.A. Wallace Budge, who encouraged her to study the history of ancient Egypt. Dorothy was 15 years old when she described the first dream meeting she had with the mummy of Pharaoh Sety. She claimed that he made her remember her past life. With time, she turned more and more to the ancient religion and stopped feeling attached to Christianity. Dorothy married the Egyptian Imam Abdel-Megid in 1931. This marriage was like a ticket to her beloved Egypt, where she became an English teacher. When her feet touched Egypt's land for the first time, she kissed the ground and felt like she was welcomed by her old home. She had a son who she called Sety. In this period, she reported having visions related to her Ra. She also discovered her ancient Egyptian name, Bentershit, meaning harp of joy. In her visions she also saw her ancient family. Dorothy said that she was a daughter of one of Sety's soldiers and a woman who sold vegetables. Her mother died when she was 3 years old, and she was given to the temple in Abydos, where she grew up and became a priestess. At 12 years old, she claimed she became a consecrated virgin, but a few years later she met a living god, Pharaoh Sety. They became lovers, and Bentershit got pregnant. Unfortunately, the lovers' fate was not a happy one. The high priest of the temple told her that the situation was a huge offense against Isis and would cause many problems for Pharaoh, so she decided to commit suicide. The eternal city of Abydos. After 19 years of living in Cairo, Dorothy Eady decided to move to Abydos. She was 52 years old, and she set up a home near the mountain Pegida Gap. According to ancient beliefs, it was a mountain which was the road to the afterlife. At this stage of life, she started to be called Sety, meaning mother of Sety. Sety believed she was finally back home. During one of her visits to the temple, the chief inspector from the antiquities department decided to check her knowledge. He was curious how realistic her explanations were. Dorothy was asked to stand next to the wall paintings in the darkness. She was then asked to identify them with what she remembered from her past life. When Eady accomplished the task without any mistakes, many people stopped doubting her story. Her life in Abydos was full of collaborations with Egyptologists who asked her for support. She published several books on her own, but also joined the works of other researchers. The most important subject of her works was, of course, the Temple of Sety at Abydos. She helped to discover the garden, where she believed she met Sety for the first time. The excavations uncovered the space, which would have looked exactly as she described during ancient times. 3. Francis Leavy's handprint. Francis Leavy was a dedicated firefighter during the 1920s. He loved his job, and his peers loved him. He was a pleasant man, always ready with a smile and a helping hand. Back in 1924, a rather strange occurrence took place. A helpful soul he was. Francis Frank Leavy was a firefighter for Engine Company No. 107 located near the west side of Chicago. Francis went through some of his usual routines that day, however he felt a bit off and his co-workers took notice of this. His typical personality seemed a bit peculiar on April 18, 1924. Francis was working on some routine maintenance, cleaning up around the fire engine house, when his demeanor changed. He wandered over towards one of the windows and was washing it. Suddenly, he stopped and leaned against the window. It was during this moment, when several other firefighters took notice of him, and what he then said. He told them he had a really bad feeling, like he was going to die soon and this day would be his last. Later in the evening, at around 7:30 p.m. someone driving by noticed smoke coming from Curran Hall. This building stood 4 stories high and was located at 1363 South Blue Island Avenue. A man ran over and pulled the fire alarm, sounding the trigger for help. There were 5 different squads, all converging at the fire location. At first, this fire didn't seem to be something so significant, until it then collapsed, trapping 9 men inside. One of the walls knocked out the electrical power inside the building. The firefighters decided to use portable lighting to see inside. They searched frantically for their fallen comrades, however all 9 of the men had been killed, including Francis. As it turns out, the building fire started not by accident, but by the owners who were trying to claim insurance fraud for their sporting goods and novelties business. They however were caught and convicted for the crime later. After the fire incident, the very next day, one firefighter noticed the same window that Francis was cleaning the day before. It looked really odd. There was a handprint embedded on the window. Several people tried scrubbing the handprint out, but it simply didn't work. The handprint remained. This astonishing handprint continued to stay there for years. Over time, the firefighters used everything from ammonia to acid. Razor blade scrapping didn't work either. Eventually, the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company was then called in. They used an extremely strong chemical solvent, yet the handprint still remained. Eerily, the handprint matched up with the personnel records on file, matching up with Francis. In particular, the thumb was the exact same size as Leavy's was. Later, a paper boy in 1946 apparently threw a newspaper, hitting the old window. It then broke into pieces. Perhaps the window was weak from people trying to clean it over the years. Francis Frank Leavy was a career firefighter reaching the rank of pipeman, with Engine Company No. 107, who served the city of Chicago while he was there. Family and friends certainly miss him, and his unusual premonition of death still baffles people today. What did he foresee and how did he know he was going to die the day? 4. Jeanette de Palma. In 1972, a dog brought something very strange to the back door of his owner's home. He had sniffed out an almost completely decomposed human forearm on a cliff top in Springfield, New Jersey, and dragged it back to its master, who realized with a great shock what it was. The man informed the police and, after a short search, they found the remains of the body to which the arm belonged. The remains were that of Jeanette de Palma, a teenager who had been missing for 6 weeks. Not only did they find her decomposed body, but there were strange objects on the ground where it lay. Rumors began to fly that the girl had been sacrificed by a local coven of witches. Others believed that Satanists murdered her for occult ritual purposes. The strangest thing about the murder, however, was the fact that no one wanted to speak about it, when an article about the incident was in its planning stages. Even after 30 years, people who lived in the area refused to comment or give their opinions on what they believe happened. Not one person who was interviewed wanted their real name used, and this even included the local police department. Leads in the case did not come in the traditional manner. People sent in anonymous letters omitting their addresses and names. One of the letters stated that logs had been placed around Jeanette's body, and that the writer of it couldn't reveal his name for many reasons, which he couldn't reveal either. Another anonymous writer wrote that he or she knew about a coven of witches in the area who were planning to murder a kid over Halloween. The writer was a child at the time and remembered being terrified of going out trick-or-treating for the holiday. Yet another letter stated that the writer's mom knew De Palma, and that they were about the same age in 1972. This letter also mentioned animals being murdered and strung up in the trees after the murder took place. In all of the letters, witches or Satanism was mentioned. One of them reiterated that De Palma was a very religious girl who wouldn't get mixed up with satanic practices. However, the writer also mentions that Jeanette de Palma started becoming a little wild as she got older. The murder of Jeanette de Palma was big news for around 2 weeks after her body was found, and then the absolute silence around it started and remained. Her murderer has never been found. 5. Kaliki Village. The mystery of the village of the damned, where a sleeping sickness causes people to fall unconscious for days. Mild-mannered pensioners swear and men have unusually high sex drives has been solved. For 3 years people in the Kazakhstan village Kaliki, nicknamed Sleepy Hollow have been puzzled as they fall asleep for 2 days at a time. Bizarre hallucinations, especially children, led one girl to see an elephant trunk on her mother, and a boy imagined horses and light bulbs flying around his head. Men there wake up after between 12 hours and 6 days sleep craving sex, walking around with erections, and causing nurses to blush. This constant state of arousal can last for up to a month. The doctors laugh, and the nurses are embarrassed when they see our men in this state, said one woman whose husband was a victim of the condition. But, although known side effects include headaches and memory loss, the long-running mystery, which has affected 160 villagers since 2012, finally looks to have been solved. The culprit is an old disused Soviet-era uranium mine the village is built on, which is pumping out high levels of carbon monoxide, poisoning the villagers. Hailing the breakthrough, Kazakh Vice President Berdiybek Saparbaev told Mail Online, the cause of the bizarre sleeping illness has been determined. After numerous medical tests, our researchers have confirmed that carbon monoxide is to blame for sleeping epidemic in Kaliki village. When carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon levels rose in the disused mine, oxygen levels fell in the village, he added. Tests, independently verified by experts in Prague and Moscow, showed levels of carbon monoxide in the air to be 10 times normal levels. Russian scientist Leonid Rykvanov blamed it on the uranium mine too, although he said it was caused by gases created when the disused mine filled up with water. My model is the only one which explains what is going on there, he said. To describe it simply, when the uranium mines were abandoned, they began to fill with groundwater. Radon and other inert gases which release as a result of the decay of uranium are squeezed out by groundwater, and through the cracks in the ground rises to the surface. It can accumulate in the cellars. Now the cause is known. Kaliki, 250 miles from the border with Russia, and neighboring ghost city Krasnogorsk, both affected, are being evacuated. The state is currently running an evacuation plan, under which people should be given a place to live in a new location. The government pays 250,000 tenge, £890, to help meet the costs. Some 68 of the 223 families there have already been moved, with the rest being relocated by the end of the year. The poisoning sparked deep concern at the village when no one knew what was causing the strange behavior, turning zombie-like people living there into the walking dead. A photojournalist who spent the night there told how children had seen their mothers grow eyes on their foreheads. She also said usually mild-mannered pensioners denounced their nurses as whores and prostitutes. Meanwhile, women told that when their husbands and boyfriends come round from the deep slumber, lasting from 12 hours to 6 days, they often awoke craving sex. One woman said, as soon as men wake up, they need sex right there and then, and this feeling lasts for at least a month. One man just out of hospital still couldn't eat properly, let alone walk, but he was all over his wife, she revealed. He really needed it. Unsurprisingly, the men were reluctant to talk about this aspect of the sleeping illness. But another woman, in her 40s, who had taken her son to live in a neighboring village to protect him from the unexplained disease, said, "My husband after he woke up called me and said, 'Listen, either you visit me right now, or I'll go to you.' There are other debilitating symptoms, including an inability to control the bladder. One poor man wet himself as he went to hospital. So the paramedics removed his pants and there he was, not properly conscious but in a state of sexual excitement," a resident said. The view of the men lying in the hospital wardrooms is called tense. Some rant uncontrollably. Locals cite the example of one man, known for his impeccable manners, who cursed nurses as whores and prostitutes, when he was suddenly struck down by the Kaliki drowsiness. Another man, apparently recovering, suddenly leapt out of bed, giving a Nazi salute to his doctors, greeting them with Heil Hitler, while a 60-year-old grandfather imagined he was a rooster, flapping his arms around and crowing. Conspiracy theorists believed they were being deliberately poisoned by property developers, who wanted them out because there was a valuable gold mine. One, who conducted his own basic scientific experiments, is convinced the phenomenon is due extraterrestrial activity. He said, "It looks like some kind of beam went through the village. I do not know what it can be. Maybe some special equipment, like emitter. I just see that the location of the homes, where people fell asleep, are in straight lines, as if some beam cut through them." He added, "I'm not speaking about UFOs. I am simply trying to understand what is going on here." 6. Joe Girardelli. Often seen at circuses and in other performances, the ability to breathe fire is a crowd pleaser. A rarer spectacle, however, is the alleged ability to ingest sizzling hot objects without any harm. Few have practiced this art throughout time, but one particular practitioner displayed this art so well, that she became known as the Queen of the Fire Eaters. Originally there may have been more known of Joe Girardelli's biography. If so, it has been lost. What is known is that she was born in Italy in the 1780s. She may have practiced her fire arts in mainland Europe, but she came into her own in England in the 1810s. She performed for elite and public alike, and everybody left astonished. A typical performance was divided up into several different types of fire eating. Recorded chronicles written in England give our only contemporary view of her amazing feats. She would begin a performance by putting nitric acid into her mouth and swishing it around. Then, taking a bar of iron, she would spit the acid onto the iron, where it would begin to eat through the iron, proving that it was a truly strong acid that had been in her mouth. Next, she showed that boiling oil could not harm her. She would take a small pan of boiling oil and, to prove that the liquid was truly boiling, she would drop an egg into it and let it cook, showing the audience that the oil was extremely hot. She then filled her mouth with the oil and, like the nitric acid, would roll it around in her mouth for a few moments and then spit it onto a nearby fire where the oil would burst into flame, proving it was indeed oil that she had put into her mouth. Her next trick was more remarkable. She would put melted sealing wax in her mouth, and then would get someone from the audience to make an official seal impression on the wax while it was still on her tongue. Not even this audience volunteer, standing so close to her, could find evidence of any trickery. She moved on to molten lead. She would dip a hand into the lead, and scoop out a handful and put it into her mouth. She was then able to remove coin-sized pieces of lead from her mouth. At this point she moved on to show that her mouth was not the only area immune to fire. She would heat a shovel to a high temperature, and then press the shovel against her hair and her arms, leaving each unburned. To finish off her performance, she would lick the shovel, and the audience could hear the hiss of the heated metal touching her tongue. Her fame spread. Everybody wanted to know her secrets, but she would dismiss all queries by saying she used a secret composition. But English scientists agreed that any protective liquid, or ointment she might have created could not possibly withstand the kind of heat generated in her performances. Debunkers and skeptics were unable to find any trickery in her performances. Believers would attend her performances again and again. She truly seemed to be able to tolerate materials hundreds of degrees hotter than the average person. There's no documentation of her life after she left England. She may have retired to a normal life, or she may have continued performing in other countries. Either way, Joe Girardelli remains the undisputed queen of the fire eaters, and how she performed her feats remains a mystery. 7. Lilin. A mysterious person has been photographed for the first time, after apparently wandering around a patch of woodland for the past 10 years. The figure, who is known as Lilin, and has been called Switzerland's answer to the Loch Ness Monster, wears a military uniform and a thick cloak, with a gas mask covering his or her face. While he does not seem to be obviously aggressive or dangerous, police are hoping to speak to Lilin in an effort to encourage him to be less threatening. Tales of Lilin have been reported in the woods, of malls in western Switzerland for the past decade, apparently walking the same route every day. However, last month Leavy published what is believed to be the first ever photograph of the figure. "I came across him near the marches," said the unnamed amateur photographer who tracked him down. "I approached him up to a dozen meters away. He had a military cape, boots and an army gas mark, an antique type, I think. He measured more than 1.90 meters. He stared at me, then turned his back on me and left in silence." One local resident encountered Leavy in June last year, when the creature appeared to be clutching a bunch of flowers. Marianne Desclux, who also lives in the area, told Leavy that her run-in with him came in spring. "It was a rainy Sunday," she said. "He had a cap, a dark cloak and his gas mask. What could possibly be going through his head? I don't know, but it was unforgettable, and unpleasant. I hope I don't run into him again." Others testified that Leavy had terrified their children with his unusual appearance, while it is said that some women are scared to visit the woods alone. "Families simply won't go into the forest anymore," a farmer said, adding that Leavy had been seen regularly over 10 years. "No one here finds this story funny. There have been a number of theories as to the figure's true identity: a mentally ill woman, a gigantic man, or someone suffering from a nasty skin condition. Others suggest that Leavy has deliberately chosen a hermit's life, perhaps because he is a survivalist obsessed with the apocalypse." Despite the terror felt by many at coming face to face with the mysterious wanderer, he has never shown signs of aggression, but local authorities are keen to get in touch with Leavy to reassure their constituents' fears. "The situation is delicate because we basically have nothing against this person," said Guy Savary, the municipal official in charge of forests. "But since he arouses these fears, we are going to hold meeting to see if we can find a way of locating him, and discouraging him from behaving as he does." 8. Hoyabasi. In a country known for its gloomy stone castles and grim fairy tale settings, the legend of this eerie forest holds its own. The Hoyabasi forest can be found in the heart of Transylvania, Romania, just outside the ancient town of Cluj-Napoca. Often referred to as Romania's Bermuda Triangle, the dense woodland is notorious for its paranormal activities, including UFO sightings, disembodied screams, and spectral visions caught on camera. Locals are convinced the forest is haunted, and might even be the home of the devil himself. Those who enter Hoyabasi report experiencing anxiety and intense nausea or migraines. Often, visitors emerge with inexplicable rashes, scratches, and burns on their skin. The mysterious nature of the forest doesn't end with its effect on humans, either. Misshapen trees grow irregularly out of the ground, while other trunks appear curiously charred. Deep in the wood is a nearly perfect circular clearing in which no plants are able to grow. Even the woodland creatures of Hoyabasi are unusual. In one instance, a group of hikers were startled by the sudden appearance of a great wolf. The beast stared blankly at the intruders, then calmly walked away. Hoyabasi gained global recognition as a UFO hotspot in the late 1960s and early 1970s, when photographs surfaced of strange lights and disc-like shapes soaring over the treetops. More recently, Dr. Adrian Patriot, a chemistry professor at a local university, launched an investigation into the area, in hopes of explaining its mysterious sights and sounds. Perhaps no one will ever know just what is going on in the dense woods of Hoyabasi. Rumors of time travel and doors to other dimensions are certainly exaggerated. Nevertheless, it's clear there's something unusual about this Romanian wood, that sends shivers down the spines of all those souls who are brave enough to visit. 9. Cosmic radio bursts. On May 14, 2014, scientists at Swinburne University in Australia caught a huge high-energy burst of radio waves on Xyros Parkes radio telescope in eastern Australia. Called a fast radio burst, the signal lasted a few milliseconds, but it gave off as much energy as the sun does in a day, said Danielle Malazani, astrophysicist at the Dark Cosmology Center, University of Copenhagen. Whatever caused the cosmic radio burst must be cataclysmic, huge and at least 5.5 billion light-years from Earth, astronomer Emily Petroff of Swinburne University told New Scientist. The study on the fast radio burst was published this week in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. Fast radio bursts are still a great cosmic mystery. These cosmic radio bursts were first discovered in the Parkes Radio Telescope's archival data in 2007. It was called the Lorimer burst, and it lasted for only 5 milliseconds. For years, the scientific community debated if the radio bursts were real or a flaw in the data. Since then, 7 events have been uncovered in Parkes data and in data from the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. Based on early estimates, scientists believe there could be as many as 10,000 of these radio bursts a day, each lasting only a few milliseconds. No one knows where exactly they come from, or what causes them. Astronomers have postulated that the mystery radio signals come from exploding stars or supernovas. They could also be caused when binary neutron stars or binary white dwarf stars collide. Another possible source of the cosmic radio waves is a phenomenon called a blitzer. Blitzers are supermassive neutron stars that should have become a black hole, but they are spinning so fast that they are temporarily prevented from collapsing. Sorry, science fiction fans. Fast radio bursts are not likely caused by aliens. Catching the fast radio burst in real time did rule out several suspects, Malazny explained in a press release. When the Parkes telescope caught the burst, they alerted 12 other telescopes to take measurements in visible, infrared, X-rays and ultraviolet light. Those observations found nothing, which was important, Malazny said. We found out what it wasn't. The burst could have hurled out as much energy in a few milliseconds as the sun does in an entire day. But the fact that we did not see light in other wavelengths eliminates a number of astronomical phenomena that are associated with violent events such as gamma-ray bursts from exploding stars and supernovae, which were otherwise candidates for the burst. Petroff and her team are now waiting to catch another burst to get more answers about the phenomenon. We have set the trap. Now we simply need to hold up for another burst to fall into it, Petroff said in a release from the Royal Astronomical Society. 10. Bukittinggi. It is hard to believe that there is near pristine rainforest just 12 kilometers from the heart of Singapore, one of the most important cities in the world. And it is even harder to believe that in this small forest patch may live the legendary Bukittinggi monkey man. The last virgin rainforest. Singapore may seem to be a small island, but its inner area was a true wilderness until recent times. Island was first crossed on horseback in 1840, and this expedition took 4 days. Nearly 200 people were killed by tigers in the forests of Island in 1860. In the central part of the island is located the tallest summit of Singapore, the 163.8 meters tall Bukittinggi. This summit was first reached by white people in 1827. In Malay this name may be translated as Tin Hill, but most likely this is transformed Bukit Temak, Hill of the Temak Trees. Nature reserve around this hill was established early, in 1883, when the forest was almost intact. Thus it has been well preserved up to this day and, reportedly, is the only pristine rainforest in major city except for Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Up to this day it happens that people get lost in this dense forest. Nevertheless, one should not forget that this forest is surrounded by a lively city, from all sides, and numerous tourists are coming every day to Bukittinggi. Could there be a large, unknown animal which survives and hides in this small patch of rainforest? Mystery of the forest. First reports about mysterious beings in the central part of Singapore are more than 200 years old. Already in 1805 one local Malayan elder told that he has seen here an upright walking being with a face of monkey. Many local people were raised with stories that children should be careful and should not approach the forest as there is the monkey man lurking around. This may be an attempt to scare the children away from the dangerous thickets, but, who knows? Maybe there is some grain of truth? Quite many weird stories and forest man were told also by Japanese soldiers, who were here during the World War II. There have been few encounters with this being after the war, last time in 2007. See an image of purported encounter with Monkey Man here. One report tells about large, human-like animal hit by taxi car in the night. Another witness saw weird being scavenging in the waste bins in early morning. Monkey or legend? According to stories, this creature is similar to primates, but walking on 2 feet, like humans. Monkey Man appears only in the night. Monkey Man is 1 to 2 meters tall, with a fur in grayish color. The most similar local animal is crab-eating macaque, Macaca fascicularis, except that this monkey is much smaller, up to 0.55 meters tall. Some evil tongues though tell that fear, or more politely, sudden surprise, has big eyes, and this small animal in some cases may seem much larger than it is in reality. This contradicts though with the sightings of local Malayans. These people know their country and its animals better than anyone else. Others place this animal in the realm of legends, and there are some legends about it indeed. Thus, according to these legends, Monkey Man is immortal, a kind of forest spirit. Some cryptozoologists, researchers of undiscovered, legendary animals, see that Monkey Man is similar to some other legendary hominids, such as orang pendek, the elusive forest man in Sumatra.